Okay, it looks like we have a good amount of people in here. We're going to go ahead and get this started. Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We really appreciate your time, and we want to thank our existing customers for joining us. And for any new customers, allow me to share a little bit who we are at SNL. My name is Aaron Arrata. I'm a sales consultant at SNL International. We are a technology consulting and services company with a strong presence in LA County and Orange County. For 26 years, we've been providing cutting-edge expertise in systems and network infrastructure, data protection, and data security. Next slide, please. What sets us apart is our team of highly trained and qualified engineers. They're the driving force behind our success. Collaborating closely with our clients, we provide solutions that precisely meet their unique needs, making long-lasting partnerships built on trust and reliability. Speaking of a valued industry-leading partnership, we are joined here today with one of our trusted top-tier partners, Barracuda. Now we have the privilege of hearing from Paul from Barracuda. Thank you.
Thanks, Aaron. Good morning, everybody. My name is Paul Eiler. I'm the Senior Channel Manager here at Barracuda Networks. Want to welcome you to our webinar on app and API security and cyber insurance, a topic that's pretty crazy right now, considering some of the things that are going on, but we appreciate you taking the time. We're going to walk you through a couple of ideas about what's going on in the area, not ideas, but some real world examples of what's going on. And as many of you in the industry know, email security is really a critical piece to understanding how to protect any organization. Phishing attacks are on the rise. They're getting more and more creative every day, but understanding how those breaches actually affect companies at the application layer is really important. And we're going to give you some information on this to help you understand how this happens. Maybe you understand it, so it might be a bit of review. Share with you some tools and some ideas of how we can help you help yourself. Some ways that you can get an idea of what's going on in your world and get a better understanding of what's going on inside of your application environment. And I'm going to bring in a couple of people that'll help show you some of these tools and some solutions for you. So let me introduce the team first. Myself on the left, as I said, Paul Eiler, Channel Manager for Southern California. Grateful to have Jared Dixon with us. Jared is the Director of Cloud Security Sales for the Western region. Jared's on our what we call our Advanced Security Group and deals with customers day to day who have applications deployed in the cloud and really an emphasis on app security. Then on the right is Chad Haskell. Chad Haskell is our Channel Solution Architect. He works with me day to day on working with our partner community, educating them, training them, getting them to understand the go-to-market strategies and the challenges that are out there. And Chad's going to join us a little bit later to show you a really cool tool we have that can help you identify what your current state is right now when it comes to app security. Next slide, please. So how big does this stuff get? If you have not seen the news of what happened in Las Vegas, this is really nothing new for us in the industry or for those of us in security. It's been in insurance and they've gotten to banks and now they're going after casinos. I'm anticipating the next thing we'll see is that football teams or baseball teams are getting breached. But the scale is really just bouncing all over the place and getting bigger and bigger every day. I found this quote on an article that I was reading about one of the breaches that in order for someone to get into MGM Resorts and actually get someone's credentials, all they did was go into LinkedIn, find a person, get their identity, and make a phone call to the help desk. So a $39 billion company was taken down by a 10-minute conversation with the help desk. Not questioning their process or policies, just demonstrating that it's becoming, in some ways, easier and easier to get those credentials because of the social areas that we deal with every single day. Next slide, please. So what we are seeing more and more as we talk to customers is, it's cybersecurity insurance. What is cybersecurity insurance really going to give them? Because I know a lot of people that I talk to, they're relying on cybersecurity insurance. And that's fine, but you have to really understand what the requirements are and the things that you need to cover. You'll notice here there's 6 specific things that are outlined by cybersecurity requirement needs. I've looked at multiple sites and I kind of came up with the same things over and over again. 4, I think, are pretty critical. 1 is risk assessment. You need to be able to be comprehensive in your risk assessment and know where do you sit right now. If you can't demonstrate that you've done that, you might get a claim not qualified. Security controls are obviously important. You need to have access controls and endpoint detection and EDR, and MFA is becoming a big piece of it now as well. Matter of fact, it's not just a big piece, it's mandatory. Everywhere you go, everything that we do in an app environment, there's MFA requirements now. Compliance and regulations driving a lot of activity in today's market. People are trying to get into compliance. They're trying to make sure that they meet the regulations. The SEC just announced this year even more requirements for companies that are public. So as these continue to expand and these requirements continue to expand, the user, the people who are responsible for securing these organizations, regardless of size, are trying to figure out, where do I find a way that can help me quickly identify, am I in compliance? Am I meeting the regulatory compliance measures that are set in front of me? Do I have the right controls? Another area is updates and patches. Are you consistently being able to monitor that? Do you get notifications and warnings? I know that I just bought a brand new phone this weekend, and all the steps it took me just to get back into my day-to-day work applications was crazy, because I'm having to go and re-authenticate and download and get this code and scan this QR code. Lots and lots and lots of layers by simply adding a phone to my lifestyle. So there's a lot of things here that really drive it. Next slide, please. What's not covered? I thought it was important as we talk about cyber insurance and how it relates to the application security level, what's really not covered and what do we need to be able to understand? So failure to understand and correct a known vulnerability, that's a really important piece of this. You have to be able to show that you can correct a vulnerability. Secondly, the cost to improve technology systems, right? Including hardening systems and the applications. These things are not covered by the cost. So it's important for you to be able to understand that going into it and being prepared for that moving forward. Next slide, please. A couple of data points that I really want to point out. 43% of breaches worldwide involve web applications. 43% in 2020. That number has definitely gone up into 2023, probably over 50% already. And many cybersecurity policies exclude preventable security issues caused by humans, such as poor configuration management. It's not a situation of people are doing a bad job. It's just, in the most part, they're not too sure where they have to go or where their open spots are or where their vulnerabilities are. And we want to be able to help people do that. Next slide, please. 90% of the web applications today are not protected. Very simply, 90% of the web apps are not protected by web and API protected services, according to a Gartner research study. So if 90% of it isn't protected, then it's much, much easier for the people, once they get those credentials, to really wreak havoc. And that's what we're here to talk about. Next slide, please. So I'm going to ask Jared Dixon to take in from this point in time. And Jared, can you kind of help us understand the top attack vectors and give us kind of an overview of where we can go from here? Jared, you might be on mute.
Yep, I got to take it off mute. Sorry about that.
There you go. Not
Thanks,
a problem.
Paul. Appreciate that. Hello, everyone. Just like Paul mentioned in the previous slide, 90% based on Gartner's findings were, not protecting their web applications and APIs. Obviously, hackers in the industry are becoming more aware of this, and kind of showing this slide. Obviously, social, attacks and phishing and pretexting and spam are still one of the top priorities for companies to protect, their users from email hacks and such. But as you can see from this slide, as far as hacking, with the kind of exposure of web applications, more and more APIs that are developing, web applications are becoming the top attack vector right now. And so it's imperative to find and have some type of application firewall to protect those applications and resources, wherever they may be, whether they're in a data center, whether they're in the cloud, or kind of in a hybrid environment. Application firewall is something that's still needed today to help prevent these type of attacks. And why is that? A lot of times that I'm talking with customers and such, they say that, hey, I don't need a web application firewall because I have a firewall. And that's kind of a misnomer there. As you kind of look at this, the differences between what a next-gen firewall compared to an application firewall is kind of going over this top level right here. I kind of relate it to, comparing it to like TSA security. as you're going through kind of TSA, that front line of security, with, they're checking your ID and such. That's kind of like your firewall. Your next gen firewall is just looking at the traffic coming in and out, making sure that there's nothing obvious with, the people going through the line, going to the next state. Kind of looking at the next stage where you're taking off your suitcase or your backpack and sending it through the scanner. It's actually looking in to see what the intent of that person is doing. What are they carrying? What's, is it a good actor or a bad actor? And that's kind of where, the application firewall sits in that secondary line of defense, where it's challenging the traffic, it's looking at the intent of what's going on and making sure that, from that point on, it's, a good actor going through there. If they find anything, like I went through just a while ago and I had a little bit of water in my water bottle, they found it, pulled it out, I had to go back through the line and kind of was challenged because of what the content of that water bottle had. And so, looking at kind of like the OSI model, you're looking at, where the firewall's handling just the network traffic of things, kind of the layer 3, maybe to layer 5 capabilities. The application firewall is taken from 5 to 7. So it's taking that SSL traffic, it's decrypting that traffic, it's looking the intent, challenging it, making sure that it is actually a good, actor, not a bad actor, or in the case of bots as well. So, kind of moving forward into this, APIs are now becoming a larger new attack surface for hackers. And the reason for it is obviously with, the traditional application where, users are going on a browser from their desktop using HTML, XML to access that resource. APIs are now becoming more prevalent, being the fact that with mobile devices, any of those types of applications, they're relying on APIs. And the API side of things are still having access to those resources, to that critical information, sensitive data, and are now becoming more and more exposed. And so as you're looking for an application firewall, also wanting to make sure that can also handle API protection, not just the regular traditional type of application protection, but also API protection. So, there was a study that was done in the last 12 months, asking customers, how, if you've been breached through an application. And it was kind of interesting to find that, 46% of respondents got breached multiple times, and another 26 got breached once. So, alarming rate, that's about 72% that were breached at least once through the application layer in the last 12 months. So obviously those are not really good numbers. And, why is that happening? A lot of it is because of the APIs. So, with the APIs growing more prevalent in the industry, allowing users to access data on their mobile devices, on their iPads, no matter where they're at, asking customers, how many APIs does your organization deploy? And it was anywhere from 11 to 50 APIs that they use for those applications. So a big surface landscape for hackers to try to break in and breach to have access to that data. So kind of focusing on API security today, and there was a white hat researcher that actually this was in InfoSec write-ups that discovered an API endpoint for a web app. And then by going through that, he was able to find a user, the login user information for that web app. And then he was able to have access through that API and able to download encrypted credit card details for just that user. But from that user, he was able to reverse engineer the credit card numbers, and then was able to do that for all the credit card numbers stored in that application database for any user. So, just that was through an API capability. And so, why is that? What are the issues with that? A lot of the developers are using, available open source plugins. And by doing that, helps the developer obviously quickly deploy those applications, be able to open up access to develop the code for, customers and users alike to be able to have access to what they need. But there is a risk with that as well, because with these, WordPress plugins and other plugins that are kind of an open source, if there is a vulnerability in that code, that basically opens up for everybody who's actually download that plugin. And this one, just the Option Monster, a WordPress plugin called Option Monster, with that vulnerability, actually over 1 million sites were affected by just that vulnerability alone, exposing, causing a risk and a vulnerability for hackers to take advantage of. There's other ones that have been exposed as well. There was Ninja Forms and SEO Press plugins that actually had those vulnerabilities just in those plugins alone. So kind of like a very important thing to note that with application firewalls, making sure that there is an API security solution built into it that's actually challenging, making sure that it's falling in line and guidelines of what it's doing, how it's functioning, and making sure that falls within those standards. Another thing that we're seeing a lot of increase around more types of hacking and exposure that's on the internet was that Barracuda, we actually worked with another third-party company back in 2021 for 6 months to see what kind of traffic that we're seeing, whether it be human, good bots, or bad bots. Now, of course, there are good bots that are needed. Those are the ones that are helping with SEO and social aspects of, presenting information through social media. But what we found with just in a 6-month peak, we found that 39% of the traffic were actually bad bots. So another thing as far as focusing on certain type of protection is having the ability to have bot protection within the security side for your applications. Because bots have been around for many years. It started off with just having the ability to run scripts through an automated bot. And now we're kind of in the 4th generation of bots, where a lot of them are actually more human-like in nature, very hard to detect, a lot of AI capabilities built into it. So with the solution that you're looking for when it becomes kind of pertaining to bot protection, needs more than just kind of signature-based bots security. You need something more along the lines with AI protection, machine learning capabilities, kind of challenging AI versus AI. And so, kind of looking at through that 6-month period, these were the top bots that we were able to see, bot spam, also bots pretending to be a specific browser that was be able to trick out the application to allow the hacker to go in, or the bot to go in, also having it pretend as to be a specific software. So there's some applications that require specific software. That bot was able to manipulate the traffic and pretend that it's actually being that software to have access to it. So with that as well, kind of focusing on API security, bot protection, there's the other side of protection is the client side. Obviously, there's a lot of JavaScript that's run on the client side, maybe making sure that that endpoint is the actual user that's supposed to be there, the good character of accessing your data. And what we found is, as far as, majority of apps use third-party code, which is somewhat alarming because you have no control over it. Obviously, it's something that's useful as far as deploying those applications, but also a security vulnerability that needs to be addressed as well. So, looking at a variety of different companies, through their web applications, how many use third-party scripts to be able to have that application work correctly. And it was in the neighborhood anywhere from 26 to 75%, or 75% of the third-party code. So with that, that's something that has to be addressed and looked at, making sure that application firewall is also challenging the endpoint, making sure that it's functioning the way that it's supposed to be designed, and the JavaScript's falling in line with the what is required for that application. Kind of case in point, this was back in 2020. Visa put this out, that this was a very intelligent type of JavaScript on the client side that was called the JavaScript Skimmer. And it was very intelligent in nature because it was able to dynamically load itself into the client side to avoid static scanners. So even if you had endpoint protection and you had signatures and virus definitions, it was dynamically avoiding those type of scanners. The unique thing that it actually did as well to prevent detection is that it was encrypting itself on a per customer. So each individual endpoint had a unique encryption. So again, avoiding those static type of virus definitions and be able to prevent itself from being detected. So something that on the challenging side for the application firewall, to be able to continue to challenge that, to make sure that the browser is actually functioning properly, it's falling in lines of the security policy to prevent any type of advanced scamming capabilities. So, Paul?
Thanks, Jared. So, folks, a couple of questions you want to ask yourself. What are you doing to secure your website? Some real important questions, some very simple questions to ask yourself is, do you have a login on your portal? Can you transact on the site? Do you offer any kind of mobile app? If you have those things, then it's something that you really need to consider about securing that site, right? Even if it's a site that's used for internal reasons only, right? Just logging in to check off a time card or record travel, whatever it may be. Next slide, please. The second question we want you guys to ask is, what kind of data does your website process? Personal information is really critical. When you have a breach and it's personal information here in California, it's tens of thousands of dollars per piece of information. So my personal information is not 10 to 15 grand, it's 10 to 15 grand per piece of information. So it can get very expensive very quickly. I'm assuming many of you know that. Passwords, payment information, credit cards, bank accounts, personal IDs, PINs, medical information. What kind of data does the site process? If you're capturing any of that, even just a login and an ID, it's something that you really need to consider. What are we doing to make sure that we're in compliance? We've got that security label. Next slide, please. And finally, what's the impact if your site was hit? So when we look back at the original case, which was the two casinos that got hit in Vegas, one of them paid tens of millions of dollars to get their data back. The other one kind of worked through it, and they were out for, I think it was 10 days for MGM Properties. And where my mind went was not how much money they could possibly lose getting their data back, but the time that it took for people that I know there who are in the security team that are trying to put everything back together, and then thinking about the associated costs for customer satisfaction over the next year. This is not something that's going to hit them for a weekend or two. This is something that's going to be prolonged over a long period of time, and they're going to feel the effects of this for a long period of time. Vegas is a business that is running 24/7. They've got some really, really big global events coming up in that city. And this is going to radically affect the way that people handle and transact inside of those properties. Or even if they stay at those properties, they might move their business somewhere else. And when you talk about some of the high rollers that are there on a regular basis, it's going to have dramatic impact. Okay, but that's a big casino. What about my company? I'm nowhere near that size. But think about the impact on your company as well. Regardless of size, it doesn't matter if you're a company of 10, a company of 100, 1,000, or 10,000, the impacts can be devastating if you have a breach of this capacity. Next slide, please. So what we want to do is we want to help people understand how Barra can help you specific to application and API security. These are two areas that are critical, and many companies don't know us for this space. One of the things that's really interesting when we talk to people every single day is they know Barracuda as an email protection company, and we are. But what we're about to share with you is that we're actually a lot bigger than that. We've been in the cloud and been doing app security for a long period of time. Next slide, please. Here's the obligatory list of various different types of customers. You're going to see a lot of logos here that you know, and many other vendors have the same slide with the same logos on it. But my point is that we've actually been in application security for a decade. We've been doing this for a long period of time, and some of the largest security deployments in the world are relying on Barracuda every single day at the application layer. And that's what we wanted to be able to share with you today, was not only how qualified we are in some of the companies that we work with, but we're going to show you a tool that can really help you understand what's your environment like, and if you have a need, a really easy way for you to get protection in a very short period of time. Next slide, please. So I think you might have to click through. Just so you guys have an understanding, we actually bought a technology called NetContinuum, and we were doing WAF with that acquisition. NetContinuum was doing WAF back in 1997. We sold a WAF before a WAF became a thing. We've been doing this for quite a long period of time. 2 of the 5 largest banks in the United States are relying on Barracuda to secure their application layer. And they've been doing that for quite a period of time. Many of you transact with one of these banks. We've been securing you that whole journey. 4,000 WAFs in our single largest deployment. 1,000 WAFs in one single deployment. So it shows you that we can scale, right? And over 200 million app and bots attacks are blocked per day by Barracuda. So we've got the cache and we've got the experience to really help you understand what this environment's like, how to look at your security, regardless of the complexity, scale, or scope. Doesn't matter if you're deployed locally or all around the globe. We've got the experience, we've got the customer set, we've been there, we've done that. We can help you to understand this more, understand your profile, and help you get secured very quickly and easily. Next slide, please. So Jared, what's the first step that we help customers take when we start a conversation around, hey, look, I want to better understand my app security, my API security. Help me understand where I am today, and what can you do to help me understand where I need to really pay attention? What can we do for them?
Yeah, great question. Thanks, Paul. So what we've provided is we have a free vulnerability manager scan tool that is available for anybody to run. What this allows you to do is to get a high-level health check of your applications. So without having to pay someone to come in and find if there's any type of vulnerability or at risk for those applications, we provide a tool that you can actually run and be able to get a report of kind of the health of your application. Now, keep in mind, it's not a deep level, pen testing type solution, but we base it off of the top 10 OWASP threats, PCI compliance, regulatory, a variety of different compliance needs. And then we just basically slowly crawl your site. It is non-intrusive. We won't take down your site, and it's not impactful to any of your customers that way. So it usually takes about 4 to 6 hours for it to run. It all depends on how deep the site is, but it's very easy to set up and run. You go through kind of basically a quick little single pane scan configuration wizard that you set up, provide a scan name for your reference, the URL that you want to scan. And then if you do want to schedule it after hours, you have the ability to do so as well. There's other areas within those tabs, like how you want to crawl your site. If you need to provide some authentication, or you want to exclude some parts of your application, you can do so. You also have the ability to, once it's completed, send you kind of like a high-level report of the health of your environment. And then once that's done, you can log back into the dashboard that we provide for you, and it will show you all the paths of that URL that you provided, of what we were able to identify, and be able to categorize each one of those URL paths, whether it be a low or all the way up to a critical vulnerability or risk for that path in that application. And so you can actually drill down into it. This is drilling down into one specific part of it, and it will tell you, is it part of the top 10 OWASP? Is it PCI DSS vulnerabilities? And we also provide a CSV link that you can go and research a little bit more about what that vulnerability is. Now, keep in mind, this is something that, if we had our web application firewall in place, we would still be protecting that application from that risk and vulnerability, and allow you to update the back end as needed. So this is a free tool that we provide that you can go to our website and be able to run and just kind of get a high overview of a health check of your application. And then from there, we work together with you with some of our solution architects. We have the ability to set up a trial version of our WAF-as-a-Service as well, and be able to start testing that very easily and quickly for you. So kind of going over, the WAF-as-a-Service, what we've done, just like Paul mentioned, we've been doing this since 2007 when we acquired NetContinuum. And we've taken that model. We went from a purpose-built appliance to a virtual appliance. We were one of the first in the public cloud to deploy our application firewall. And we've taken that same proven technology through those different deployment options, and we provided a SaaS as a service model. This way, it allows you to focus on the security side of your application, to be able to create security policies, not only from the security policies that we provide in the templates and the constant tuning that we provide to help with the security of that, but allows you to not only protect that application in a 3-step wizard. So within 3 steps, you can actually have a secure web application firewall in front of that application. But we also have provided the ability for you guys to fine-tune those policies through an intuitive structure. So there's nothing limited on the SaaS environment that you can't do or change or tune those policies to make sure that those applications, there might be some legacy applications that the security templates might be a little bit restrictive, that we can open up and make sure that your application works properly and not have any issues that way. We've also provided a full REST API for those customers who want to do automation or orchestration through the SaaS offering without having to touch a UI. That is an option for customers to be able to do. But with our solution also, we've built in an unmetered DDoS protection. So this DDoS protection is unlimited and unmetered. So it doesn't matter the size of a volumetric attack. We will mitigate and we will scrub and we'll clean that traffic and pass it to your application. There's no additional cost for it. It's a one cost for that protection within your application. So no unseen future cost of any type of DDoS attack. Also with the solution, you have the ability to automate vulnerability identification. So you can set up custom scans at certain times to continue to monitor your application to see if anything was changed or if there was new development that was rolled out to that application, that if there was a vulnerability, we would be able to identify that. And with that, we can either do it in an automatic remediation and create the security policies for that, or you can actually apply those things yourself. So this solution is a very strong, powerful solution. Like, Paul mentioned, top 5 banks are using this solution, but also scales to also SMBs that can't afford to have their application be compromised. And what we've done, just kind of like as where does this sit? Where does the WAF-as-a-Service sit? We've co-partnered with Microsoft, and we've basically taken our WAF and we've containerized it. And so when you deploy a web application firewall as a service, it's deployed in Azure. And with that, we provide high availability, resilience, and scalability right out of the gate. So not only is it an availability set in an HA pair, but we also do zone failover as well, capabilities for regions. So if you want to define where you want your primary and your secondary failover per region, you have the ability to define that, or it automatically does that for you. But we've basically taken the world's strongest and best network infrastructure in the world, and we've containerized and we've built our WAF on top of it. So with that, it's trying to strengthen security. We were one of the first security providers in Azure providing application and network security. The reason why we shared this slide is mainly just because to let you know that, we take application security very seriously. We've been around for a long time, and we try to make it to where it's easy to configure, easy to deploy, and quickly secure those applications. So with that, I'll turn the time over to Chad to kind of go into a little bit more of the WAF-as-a-Service, the interface, and some of the navigation with that.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Jared. So, some of the things that, I can't stop sharing because here we go. No, maybe I can.
Go ahead and share.
There we go. There we go. Now life's getting better. All right, so here, let's expand this out. And yeah, how's that look? Look good?
Looks great.
Perfect. Just again, just a few things. And I just want to make sure that as we're kind of going through all these numbers, of the top 5 banks, we secured 2 of them, and Barracuda's been doing this for 10 years. And I just want to be real clear, right? Net Continuum, they started with a WAF play in 1997, and they were the preeminent player when we acquired them, right? And we acquired them in 2007. So I just, I don't know, maybe it's one of those things. It's just the fact I've been around Barracuda for as long as I have. I just kind of feel the need to play that role as that historian. But anyway, I didn't want that to get lost on anyone, right? To get to Jared's point. So one, real quick, while I'm here, this is what that vulnerability manager looks like, right? You literally, you're able to pop in here, and if you want to kick off a scan, you say new scan. Like Jared was showing you in those screenshots, you point out the URL, you give a little bit of information about how how you're able to prove that you have rights to scan that, and then boom, it's off to the races, and then you're able to look at that output. But once you take the step beyond scanning, beyond figuring out what those vulnerabilities are, figuring out where the code is either susceptible to compromise, or it's just maybe malformed or poorly written. Once you go past that, figuring out where those gaps are in your security, then moving to the actual WAF-as-a-Service to be able to provide that remediation, because that's really what it is. It's providing this overlay. Think of it as a cloak or a shield, right? So that way, as the bad guys are trying all of these known type attacks, it's giving it very little. Right? If I start sending fuzzing data at a web server and it comes back with Apache version blah blah blah, no, page can't be displayed or something like that, well then now I just got a bunch of information, and so now I can go in and I can find out what specific attacks I want to deploy to that particular version of Apache. But with this is providing that very minimal attack surface that is designed not to give up information. And so all we need to do to be able to implement this is we just add an application. It just says, hey, what's the application's name? What's the domain? And then whenever you hit continue, then you answer, a few questions. I think we got it down to a 5-question wizard now, or maybe 3. Where are we at now, Jared? Is it 3 or 5 questions? 3 questions. See, we keep making it simpler and simpler. I remember when I first was dealing with Net Continuum, it seemed like an insurmountable task, and I was thinking, I understand that this is difficult to do, and it's a worthwhile task to do, but my goodness, it just seemed like it was so complex. But now, with 3 questions, boom, you can immediately start to have protection. And then once we start to move through, once we get our application added, we can decide exactly what we want to do with this application. Is it going to be content delivery? What are we doing? And then based upon what we're doing, we're able to go through here, and we're able to decide how we want to actually configure that front end WAF. But the point is that you're able to quickly get an application into a state where it can be protected, and then through very little configuration, you're able to provide that protection. And then with the logging, you're able to actually see what's happening, right? You can filter these logs. You can choose, different policies, right? Maybe you want to apply a GeoIP policy or something like that, especially if it's an internal resource, if it is your holiday schedule. Well, holiday schedules are going to be regionalized. So why would somebody outside of the region be accessing, a holiday calendar? Maybe it's a SharePoint calendar, something like that. Well, there's no reason for it. So then, going through, seeing what kind of traffic is hitting it, and then being able to quickly, decide, how you're going to deal with that. Being able to apply different logic for the actual backend servers. How are the backend servers going to be hit? Is it going to be, through a round robin, or, do you want to go with a weighted round robin? Do you want to go with least requests? Do you want to, apply something for failover or errors, right? There's a lot of functionality that can actually be brought to bear in a very simple, very easy to understand interface. And I think that is probably the greatest value, right? Is that we're taking something that is incredibly nuanced. I don't want to say complex, but nuanced, incredibly nuanced. And we're taking something that is incredibly powerful, and we're able to, because of our years of experience in dealing with this and solving these problems and interacting with clients just like yourself, we're able to take that understanding and that exposure, and we're able to actually provide you with something that is highly usable and highly effective to somebody that would otherwise, struggle to bring this level of protection to bear. When we're talking about, CDN, content delivery networks, I remember when I started working with this, it was something that I struggled with. When with this particular solution, you're able to quickly, get in, choose the content you want to provide and make that available. And then, like I was talking about, especially if we're talking about a holiday schedule, you're able to actually set UIP filters. So you don't have to worry about protecting this resource from the world. You just have to protect this resource, from local, local connections, right? And again, when we're talking about the myriad of bots, when we're talking about the myriad of bad actors, if you're able to shrink your world, if you're able to shrink your attack surface, it just makes it so much more manageable, right? You can really get your arms around it. And then again, depending upon, what kind of data is being presented at the site, is data theft protection, does that matter, right? Are you wanting to, are you needing to leverage encryption? What are you doing? But we offer the granularity for you to be able to actually configure on a site-by-site basis, what really matters based upon the content that's being presented. So like I said, I just wanted to kind of show you guys, what the actual solution looks like once you get it deployed, and how you're able to go through and you're able to run reports. You're able to see, the top attacks. You're able to see, what URLs are being requested over time. You're able to go through and you're able to see, what changes are being made and how they're being made. And then of course you're able to set up notifications, because that's really a key piece, right? Is you don't want to have to spend your life, staring at these logs, but instead you need to be able to go out and you need to be able to, shift your focus to whatever is demanding it at the time, but know that you put the proper measures in place to where if something does happen that requires your attention, you will be notified and you'll be able to respond accordingly. So anyway, so that's pretty much it. I know we're almost out of time, and I want to make sure that we, allow, follow-up, right? What are next steps? How do I get involved? What does it look like to move forward with this new information that I've just received? So with that, I'll stop my share and I'll turn it back over to the fellows here.
Thanks, Chad. So folks, what's next? I hope you've seen a couple of things here that might interest you. Maybe there's reason for you to try out the Vulnerability Manager. It can't hurt. It's completely free. Thank you, Jared. You can ask yourself, how are we protecting web applications? And maybe you want to take a look, right? So the Barracuda Vulnerability Manager is free. It's a scan. You can click on that link. We will send it out in a follow-up email as well. It's pretty straightforward to set up. If you have any questions, by all means, reach out to SNL, reach out to us. We can work with you on that part of it. But why not run it? If you've got a solution in place, run it right now and just make sure, do a spot check. Make sure you got a health check going on and that you that we're seeing everything that you need to see, right? Second, if you want to schedule up a follow-up, if you want to run that and go through that report, we'll buy you lunch for doing it, right? Just run the report, and when it's set, follow up with your SNL rep. They'll get our experts here on the phone, and we'll set some time up. We'll go through that report with you. We'll buy you lunch for you and a buddy, and really give you an idea of what we see and what we're looking at and how you may be able to solve for that, right? If WAF-as-a-Service looks like something you need to look into, then definitely give it a trial. We've got a free 30-day trial, no cost, no purchase required. You can run it. And if you run that report and we help you set that thing up, now you can actually see what that security is going to look like, see how it affects your organization. But more importantly, have peace of mind that at least you've got some coverage, right? And finally, we're going to send out in a follow-up email a link to an ebook. It's called The New ABCs of Application Security. Take a moment and just read through it. It's got some really interesting information, some really valuable information, but it's going to help you understand the most critical areas that you want to be paying attention to. If this is a new topic to you, I strongly recommend it. If you're someone that's already deploying a WAF, or you've got applications deployed in whether it be via a URL in a browser or especially in a mobile app, take a look and maybe just do a spot check and see what you can do. So those are the next things that you can do from this point and forward. Really recommend you take a look at the BVM, what we call the BVM, the Vulnerability Manager. It can give you an idea of where you are and where you sit right now today. Next slide, please.
Yep. Real quick, I want to add on that, Paul. For the
Nope.
WAF-as-a-Service trial, one of the things is that you can work with one of our solutions architects to help with that. So you're not on your own. We'll work together with you. We can stand it up very quickly. At very non-intrusive to your environment. You can test without actually swinging the data over. So there's no impact to your environment, but it is a very useful proof of concept to be able to use for 30 days. And we're with you there as well, making sure that everything's tested properly. And then with APIs, we also have the ability to discover those for those APIs that you may not be aware of. But just wanted to point that out. It's pretty good value there at no cost.
And folks, the reason why we've partnered with SNL is because they've actually deployed our WAF solution. They understand the platform. They understand the customer's needs. They understand what questions to ask and how to help you kind of walk through various different aspects of understanding where is your security layer right now? Where do you need to really focus on? And how do you most effectively do that in a way that makes some sense? So we're going to open up for questions. I captured a couple that I'm going to answer real quick. If you guys have any other questions, please just go ahead in the Q&A and put it in there. We'll be sure to make sure we answer those. One of them that I got was, how long does it take for the vulnerability manager to run, and who actually can see the report? Jared, you want to answer that one?
How long does it take to run for the vulnerability manager?
Yep. And who can see the report?
So you'll actually have the ability to send it to whoever set up the access for the user account. You'll be the ones that will be able to receive that. You can schedule and have that report sent to you and have access. And usually it takes, depending on how big the site is, but it can run anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, be able to do a full scan of your site.
Okay, great. And they get the report. So they want to notify us when they have it. We get notification the report's ran, but they actually get the data, correct?
That is correct.
Okay, so it's secure, folks. Another question was, does the report help in setting up any of the WAF policies, or is there any kind of integrations? What I'm assuming this is, and yeah, Jared, can you talk about how we can integrate those two tools?
Yeah, so with that report, we have the ability to do an auto remediation. So we can take that information and then import that into the WAF-as-a-Service to making sure that those security policies are in place. And that's something that you'll have continuing. If you do purchase the WAF-as-a-Service, you still have the ability to use a vulnerability manager scan, and you can schedule that on a continual basis, how often you want to scan your site. It just all depends on kind of your DevOps and how much they're changing. But we do have automated remediation capabilities as well as discovery built into the solution. And that's one thing to point to, is that all these things that we've talked about, API protection, bot protection, client-side protection, CDN, DNS security, that's all built in at a single cost. So very powerful solution right out of the gate.
Excellent, thanks. Last one was, does Barracuda provide assistance in deployment? Yeah, we can provide assistance, and so can our partner. We work hand in hand with SNL International. It's one of the reasons why we've asked them to join us in this webinar. So if you need assistance, yes, there are services available, pro services available, everything from the initial discovery phase. What are we doing? What kind of information have we found in the report? How do we best, build the policies, to deployment and management if necessary. So reach out to our friends over at SNL. They can definitely help you with that part of it. I don't see any other questions. Amber, do we have any other? I don't see any other. I just wanted to make sure you answered the ones that I saw that came through already.
No, there's no new ones.
All right, great.
One thing, if you guys would allow me to just add in a little piece, again, just a little bit from my background, right? So, historically, years ago, I was a sysadmin, and I remember when I would work with my web developers, right? They would basically tell me, okay, look, I need these ports open to these IPs, and so I would create the forwarding rules. I would create whatever rules on the firewall, and I'm kind of telling on myself a little bit, but that was it. I might ask a little bit about what the traffic was or whatever. But basically they would just kind of tell me, hey, this is what I need. And me being the sysadmin and, the network admin, the backup admin, and whatever else, I wore a lot of hats at that time. But, it was my job basically just to facilitate, the work that they were doing and to, to make available whatever resources that they were publishing. However, back at that time, there wasn't a great deal of inspection. I wasn't asking, okay, so, you know, what more do I need to do? Because the reality is that was all the controls that I had. I could just open up a port from here to here, and then that was it. You know, there was no intelligence. There was nothing really looking at that traffic and making sure that that traffic was appropriate, right? And that's really what the WAF does, right? Is you're able to actually you know, go through and you're able to really, you know, provide controls, not just, you know, this port from here to here is open, but you're actually able to make sure that the traffic that goes over that port is appropriate, you know, for the resources that's hitting at the various websites, at the not just at the pages, but the various fields, right? You know, why would somebody, you know, if they're asking to put in an address in a website, you know, and they're, you know, looking for a US-based address, you know, why does that address look like select star from where, you know what I mean? It's like you wouldn't put a SQL command in when we're just asking for an address. And so it's those kinds of things. So it's really what I want you guys to hear me say is that it is absolutely a tool that is, you know, able to be deployed, that is able to provide that insight, that visibility, that control beyond just, okay, well, you know, I need this API to be published, you know, to the outside world. Okay, great. But now you're able to actually bring something in that is going to marshal the communication that actually goes to that API to ensure that whether that API is vulnerable or not, which, you know, we all know there's a vulnerability in everything. But the idea is now it's able to marshal that communication and make sure that if there is a vulnerability in that API, that vulnerability is not able to be exploited. So anyway, so I just wanted to give a little more background there for those of you. So with that though,
Thanks, Chad. No, that's really good information. And folks, I mean, I know we're right at the top, but just something that I've experienced over the last couple of years and working with partners and being at a lot of these big conferences is, you know, people in IT are looking not necessarily for another tool or for a better tool or a way to consolidate, or, you know, how do I effectively support my developers who are building apps on the fly? And when they want to spin up a server and start doing some testing, how do I put out policies that can, you know, I can ensure that when they do this and they want to do some testing, and they want to just do some limited access, right? How do I know that they're doing things the right way? And developers want to be able to develop. They want to be able to write code and get their app out there. And it's on security. It's on people like you to make sure that those efforts are safe, not just from when, you know, at the end when it goes public, but during the entire testing phase. Something like this can really help you identify where are the vulnerabilities and set some policies very, very quickly so that you can make modifications on the fly. You can do it in a short turn. And that gives your development team a greater amount of flexibility. Instead of having to wait for something to be set up, you can set it up in minutes. And that's really why the WAF-as-a-Service, I think, is so powerful. So we want to thank you all for joining us. As I said, we will be sending out a follow-up email with this, with some information, with some really good links. If you want to know some more about the products and how they work, or hear some customer responses or some case studies, let us know. Our S&L team will be reaching out to you with that. And take the time, run that BVM. And if you find some information you want us to review it with you, like I said, we'll buy you lunch just to sit down and go through it. It's free information. So thank you so much for joining. We appreciate you taking the time. Have a wonderful week and take care.